This part of the video, I just want to do two kind of subjects. So the first subject is going to be, let's say, the more affordable way to play, because there are a lot of cheap ways, I already mentioned throughout the first part, that we can do and still have upscaling going on. However, we also have like the ultimate way if you want to burn a lot of money, and in this way we have like great overall performance. What I do wanted to do actually is finding just plug and play solutions. Because if you're going to be talking about like different ways you can play with building your own machine, yeah, that is a rabbit hole, that is absolutely an endless rabbit hole. So that's something I don't want to do. And of course, if you're going to be using an RTX, let's say 5060 or something crazy, even more crazier, we're going to be paying like hundreds of dollars for a single GPU. And that's not the direction I wanted to go to. I just wanted to see something plug and play that we can use, and we can have some overall, let's say 4K rendering resolution. If you want to find something that is mini PC based, but you don't want to tinker and you want to have something ready to go, this can be an interesting option. Nowadays we have these 3D printed cases that come with a built-in N100 mainboard. So it's still a low-end chip, but the overall performance of these chips are getting way better now. Okay, the case is more like a debatable situation, but if you're going to be looking at what it can do, I think it's pretty cool. Of course, we have thousands of different stuff you can just play with this, like the 8-bit, 16-bit. That is something I want to focus. Let's say N64, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, PlayStation 2. You know, there was so much cool stuff that we can actually play with these things. And with a 3D printed case, I'm not like the most beautiful ones out there. I think when it comes to the N100 mainboard plug and play solution, this can be very interesting. But how about the controllers? So the first generation are still there giving us these fake PlayStation 2 wireless controllers, and the overall quality is quite bad. First of all, they're smelling really chemical, and some of them even having these plastic joystick thingies. They don't have even rubberized, no rumble function whatsoever. So another controller we did see in the past was the BiteHop controller. This is on like a semi PlayStation 4 lookalike, I think it is. But it was a very nice quality controller, one of my favorites. But they are quite expensive, and they are only giving you this when you're having a very expensive PC or Super Console X thing. However, so these two are not relevant. But now we're getting the Xbox 360 controllers. And they are great. Like, they are not like the supreme quality that the original controllers are, particularly when you're going to be hearing this. Sometimes you do have minor differences with the quality. Maybe this is like a different manufacturer or whatever. But I have been choosing the Xbox 360 controller because in my opinion this is the best you can get when it comes to these budget classic kits. They're using, or at least like the layout looks absolutely great, the LCD games. But all games, Amstrad GX4000, Apple MAME, there is so much different stuff. It's unfortunate that but and some other stuff is not having nice decals. Maybe we can change it out, update it. We have even some Windows games. They're also like putting only one game on there. I find it a very clicky D-pad. But I'm curious about the N64, GameCube, stuff like that. How will that actually work? Baldacera version 40 at this moment. So let's go to the system settings, and I'm keep pressing the wrong button because it is switching out the A and B all the time with different systems. Oh, annoying. But information, here we're going to be finding the details. So indeed we are running on a 400 or at least like 500 gigabyte device. Not everything has been filled to the maximum, so that is great, particularly these two partitions if you want to update the system. We're running the N100 over here. That is a CPU core with 4 or quad core, 3400 megahertz. So I know it's running 30 Celsius now, so it's not absolutely bad itself. We have enough RAM of the 8 GB, unfortunately it's not dual channel. And moving on, we're having over here some Intel graphics, yep. 100 is a capable chip and even capable to run some games of the Windows platform. I think they're using the Proton, or this is a different configuration. However, this may be a fun overall idea to look into it, and we'll see what we can actually do more in the end, because this is absolutely awesome. We have many games to emulate. We can also just play Windows games and newer generation games like the Turtle game. Just wanted to move on to the Super NES because this is one of those great systems. And we don't have any problems with overall emulation here. So they also implemented the bezels for the right aspect ratio. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to that, because for me, I think just some black bars around it is just fine when it comes to the emulation and the aspect ratio. Let's get into the Sega the Sega part, the Sega Genesis to begin with, I love the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis. Such a cool system, and we have been testing all kinds of weird clone systems on the channel. It is absolutely a fact that we're going to be having so much more overall performance with Sega on a device like this, and not for the Sega Genesis part or Mega Drive, because this is just running just fine, you know. Just wanted to do a little bit of upscaling for 720p, and the main reason is just wanted to see how far we can push it. Take note that the GPU of the Intels are not my favorite ones on board, with a simple reason, because these things do struggle. We can also lower to 480p, and also depending what kind of game you want to play, but some games are very easy to emulate, and you can just even maybe get a little bit of a higher resolution going on. So one of the things that is really appealing about the N100 chipset is that we can actually play some N64 without any problem whatsoever. Yeah, so the N64 is such a problematic emulator for low-end chips, and we have tried this on so many different boxes now. However, this is not going to be a problem when it comes to cruising the USA, the ultimate test for actually playing some games. But I also wanted to check out some other games and also do a little bit of an upscaling, because this is one of those systems where we can actually do upscaling, and I think makes N64 look so much better, particularly if you're going to be using this mini PC on a bigger screen. But let's get into some gaming, and you can see some stuttering going on, because now we're going to be pushing this N100, actually like this low power chip, to the maximum level. So let's see what happens. We're going to be having a 50 frames per second with some minor dip of 42. So in other words, you can play F-Zero X on native resolution, but when it comes to upscaling, I think we need to step it down one little step. Simply because this is just too much. If you don't mind the hiccups, then it's not going to be a problem whatsoever. So out of the box, we can play it on native resolution, no problem what kind of game. And of course you can also switch between the different emulators if you want to. So next up, the GameCube, another great system with very nice titles. However, if you want to play some games with this, we can do a little bit of an upscaling. However, I've been testing it with 1080p, but this is way too much. And also depending what kind of game. If you have two-dimensional games, you can do a crazy upscaling where we're having like so three-dimensional games. We have, let's say, less overall performance when you're going to be upscaling to higher stuff. Nevertheless, the performance also on native is just great, what you can just actually see over here. I just wanted to see how far we can do it. And of course, here, same story, that we do have a little bit of a difference between the games, so we need to do a little bit of tweaking. We don't have enough power to say like, hey, we're going to be rendering everything on 1080p or 4K or 2K resolution. So it's going to be different per game, but with this particular one, it seems to be working just fine. I just wanted to start off with a two-dimensional one. So it's from 3840. So it's going to be, I want to say next level, but just to see how far we can push this device. Oh, fire it up. What a great game. This was actually the first game that I purchased from my PlayStation Portable 1000. It reminds me of the old school days of Twisted Metal. Yep. Can we skip the shit? No, we cannot skip shit. Oh. There we go. I recall this was a 30 frames per second game when it comes to frames originally. Notice that the 4K rendering resolution of the Sega Saturn was not a good thing. The unfortunate, I don't have a frame per second counter, it doesn't be enabled. But let's boot it up if I can even drive with this freaking thing. Oh, there we go. Nope, there we go. I can hear that it struggles on 1080p. And of course it will be depending what kind of game you're going to be playing. But when it comes to playing this game, getting into the game, it's not going to be a big problem with some minor hiccups. So emulation performance of the Sega Dreamcast part is quite nice, but I think we need to switch between 720p or 480p to get an overall great experience. We can switch between emulators if you want to. But when it comes to upscaling on the N100, it's not going to be the best solution out there. You can see that we do struggle with, let's say, not getting 4K rendering resolution. But hey, you can still play a lot of games on better than native resolution. And if you're going to be comparing this with, say, with an original piece of hardware, yeah, you're going to be having overall better performance. And again, yeah, when it comes to, let's say, the overall performance, I mean in particular, of course, the upscaling, everything looks slightly a little bit better, and it's just like an easy plug and play solution. Of course, if you're going to be deep diving in something you can make yourself, because that is another way, in a low budget way. The things I really like are these HP ProDesk things, and you know, we have these tiny boxes with Intel, and Intel CPUs are great for upscaling. We have an okay GPU. I think the performance is not going to be any better when it comes to, let's say, the N100 in certain ways, but what is kind of interesting, if you're going to be using, let's say, the bigger model, and we're going to be adding an old school GPU. And yeah, if you just want to have a little bit of a boost, you can buy these things as like a plug and play solution. Also with Bottasera, you just click it in, screw it with one screw, and you're just done. You know, you can just easily plug and play. But in this way, we do have a little bit of better upscaling, and we can still use these original HP ProDesk devices. But let's get into some emulators and have some fun. So the next thing we're going to be doing is choosing the certain game to be testing, and Die Hard is one of those games I always love to check out. However, next thing we're going to be doing is holding the A button. Then we're going to be advanced game options, choosing the different emulator, in this case the Yaban Shinjiro. And next up we're going to be doing a little bit of rendering resolution. So it has been set to 4K, but we're going to be messing with it to see how far we can actually push it with the GPU. And if it has horrible performance, we can also implement the extra GPU like the NVIDIA to see if you're having any improvement. But Sega Saturn on 4K rendering resolution doesn't really need an extra powerful GPU. We can just run this on this, I think it's called the 630 onboard Intel GPU. That's kind of nuts if you think about it. So only downside I think of the Yaban Zero emulator, that the overall audio quality is good, but it is quite low. So we need to tweak with that. However, if you're getting into this Die Hard and many Saturn games, 4K rendering resolution without any problem. So let's try this on some really high resolution, 3840, just to see how far we can push it. It dips down to 49. I'm quite surprised at the overall performance. Dipping to 45. But it would be a fun thing, 43 frames per second. But what you can actually do is just do the same game and implement the GPU of NVIDIA to see if this is going to be an upgrade, or at least a minor upgrade, with the 1030 GT. Oh, this is such a fun little game. So let's see how it performs now with a different GPU implemented. So I know for sure if you're having a different, let's say, CPU, GPU combination, so having a more powerful GPU can even do some more wicked stuff. But the overall performance is so much significant better now, where it struggles big time without the other GPU, or the onboard GPU actually. Now we can just have a lot of fun on full 60 FPS. And of course you can also do a little bit of tweaking with two-dimensional games to see if you can have higher resolution going on with, for example, two-dimensional games. Moving on to the Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure 2 with the same resolution actually. So this is going to be the resolution that we're going to be using with the same like the Atomic Wave. So let's get into the game, resulting in the same kind of overall frames per second. Where I think it's still playable. If you don't see the frames per second, I think it's going to be a still overall fun experience. I love it how the vibration also works on the controller, where you can just see it dipping. You do see the stuttering visuals even not looking at the frames per second. This game is even running more horrible than the Atomic Wave version, with dipping to 41 frames per second. But how much fun would it actually be to add the GPU now and to see what happens? And take note, it depends on what kind of GPU you're going to be using, where the 1030 GT is not a great card in my opinion about it. There are way better options out there, but yeah, again, we are a limitation of the space inside of the case itself. That the performance boost is not that great. We do have like 50 frames per second now. Okay, so certain parts we do see an upgrade when it comes to that, but the overall performance, it's still okay when it comes to that. I was expecting way better performance now. So this part, previously we had like 40 frames per second. Yeah, you can see that we have indeed an increase of 10 frames here. Okay. I think I spoke too early when it comes to that. And again, I think if you're going to be using a GPU that is more powerful, we can just hit the 60 frames per second without any problems. Or of course getting a way newer generation Intel CPU or having an AMD Ryzen, because those APUs or GPUs on board are so great. So with PlayStation 1 we can do already some crazy upscaling with 4K rendering resolution. We had a minor dip to 41 frames per second, but that was only a minor dip in the beginning, but having a very stable overall frame rate on the onboard GPU. So where we have a great overall performance here, what we can actually try is to get ourselves a higher resolution and implement the GPU. But it's quite amazing to see that we can do so many cool overall rendering on just an onboard 630 GPU. There we have in the 43 dip. But let's see if it still dips if you're going to be implementing it on a GPU. I think it's going to be even more fun to check out. But let's move on to the Crash Bandicoot game with PlayStation 1. And the simple reason is that with the 4K we had overall great performance. And I can tell you, not want to push it further with the onboard chip. But now we have 11 times the resolution with the built-in GPU, and I got a TNT stuck on my head. Doesn't matter. So far no dips in having the stable 60 frames per second. And that is a very cool thing to see. So this is an example that with even a very cheap extra GPU implemented in, you can just have even higher resolutions in some of the games. And that was actually the clue of the experiment too, just see how far we can push it. And again, if you're having a way more powerful or better than a 1030 GT, we can even have the option maybe to put it on 12 times rendering resolution. And if you're fine with 4K, you can just use the onboard GPU. Just I wanted to check out if we can actually play some Tekken with rendering resolution on the onboard chip first. You can see that it struggles. It's running on 1080p rendering resolution. Ooh, it really has a little bit of struggle here and there, but I think that's going to be a great sweet spot to check out if we can also implement an extra GPU and see how far we can go then. But if you don't want to tinker, but you do want to have upscaling on a low budget way, this is another way. Get yourself an old AMD Ryzen HP PC, or maybe there are like other brands out there have similar, let's say, specs. This is like the first generation, but the GPU that's actually on board is quite good. I must say it's not like the best one out there. I would not expect like say AAA gaming on Windows, but if it comes to emulation, we can do some fun things with this. And I think that is one of the things that really appeals to me. And again, if you find an HP or another brand for under $100, slap and bother share drive on it and we can do some really cool things. I've been testing a lot of different older emulators, but we're going to be checking out some other ones. So we have been seeing all kinds of handhelds and basic stuff, but in this part I want to do a little bit of an upscaling. Yep. So we have all kinds of new, let's say, systems has been released throughout the years on Batocera, but let's go for example with N64 and let's do a little bit of an upscaling, see how far we can push it. N64 will run a native resolution, but how far can we push it and all the other systems? So let's find out. But how does it actually work? We're going to be holding the A button. So if you're going to be into the N64 list, holding the A button now, then we're going to be having the advanced options. At the right over here, we get an extra menu, advanced game options. We have different kind of emulators that we can implement, but some of them we can even do a little bit of an upscaling, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So rendering resolution has been set to 720p. We're just going to be looking into different emulator, let's say options, and see how far we can push it. And I think we do have like some really cool things going on over here, thanks to the GPU that comes with the AMD. This may be better than the Intel one. So first off, let's do a little bit of rendering resolution of 1920 by 4040, if I'm saying it correctly. So it's going to be some next level when it comes to that. See how far we can push it and do we have a stable frame rate. Because of course we can do a little bit tweaking, we can even do a little bit more upscaling, but also downscale everything. However, let's get into gaming. So a native resolution, this runs on many different mini PCs nowadays, so that's absolutely awesome. But One of the more appealing things with this AMD mini PC that we do have like upscaling, and the 64 looks absolutely great. You can see that we have some minor stutters, but not to the point that it's going to be making this game unplayable. So Cruise in the USA is one of those test bench games that struggles on so many cheap game boxes. But let's go into some more gaming, because in this part I just want to do a little bit of an, let's say, different games on the same systems, because some of the games have like a slightly different overall result. I do see a little bit of stuttering going on left and right, the same with Cruise in the USA. But let's deep dive into some GoldenEye action. You can see it struggles, particularly in the beginning. But getting through the game, you see the game is just playable on these high resolutions. So if you want to have no, let's say, stuttering going on, what you can actually do is just like lower it in resolution, less quality, but we have like the better performance. So that's something you should, like, say, consider for yourself. Moving on to the PlayStation 2, we have great performance with 1080p rendering resolution. And yep, you can do tweaking here and there, but I am quite satisfied with such an overall good performance with a Tekken 5. The game has never been looked so great, and then for such a low-powered mini PC. And that, I think it has to do thanks to the GPU, because this gives us so many cool new upscaling options. Dolphin, but also the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 and many other systems.
Round 2. Fight.
But let's try another game, a two-dimensional fighting game, and yep, we're having over here 4K rendering resolution with PlayStation. So I had the option to do this with Tekken, but I didn't want to do this because I know the two-dimensional stuff is less demanding. But you can see full 4K render resolution, great performance on this mini PC. And that's what I exactly mean. We need to do tweaking and tweak your favorite game to a certain level that makes it still playable and look amazing. If you want to spend some serious money, you can actually get yourself like a newer AMD Ryzen model. I love these tiny PCs from Beelink, Chewy, you know, and you can slap in an SSD or an NVMe, depends on, let's say, what it utilizes. But however, if you're going to be doing that, you can use Windows itself with RetroBed, Emulation Station, and just do separate emulators and tinker with those settings. And this way we can set it up. And when it comes to the 6,000, 7,000 or maybe even the 8,000 series, we have some really crazy performance thanks to the powerful 780M onboard GPU, if I recall it correctly. And the performance is going to be so much better than all of the stuff you have seen now before. Any stuff you can actually play. So yep, you can play all kinds of old school retro games. Think about the 8-bit, 60-bit, like a Super NES, that's no problem whatsoever. So this is not what we're going to be focusing on this video. But so we're going to be looking into is like the later systems. So if you're not really interested, let's say, in the later system, think about an Xbox Classic. I can tell you, you can better get yourself a device that costs like $16 or all the way up to $90, and you have like tons of fun with that. But basically, what you also can do with this is upscale. In other words, the rendering resolution is going to be way higher and everything looks so much better. I think that is one of those potential things you're getting with such a powerful device. So let's start with it and let's have some fun. I'll give you an example. Won't be in the Dreamcast list. Here we can hold the A button. And we're having this single game that can be adjusted with the advanced games options. In here we're finding different kind of, let's say, emulators. Normally it has been set to auto. We're going to choose Libretto Flycast. And let's see if we can go into the upscaling option. So rendering resolution, so let's put this thing on 4K resolution or 3840 by 2880. And let's boot up the game. But let's take a close look at the system settings with the device, simply because I just wanted to showcase actually what having in the inside. So here we go into the information, and you can see that this temperature is around 40 Celsius. This thing has been running for quite a long time now. So they have the model GTR Linux version 6.3.6, and of course we're having OpenGL, and then we are also having the very powerful AMD Ryzen graphics in the inside that will help this thing absolutely. Overall, so this thing is a CPU number of 16. It seems to be running on 3.8 gigahertz or 30,800 megahertz. So this thing is absolutely a beast when it comes to it. So the Radeon 780M graphics, and with the AMD Ryzen 7 7840HS. And this is a great example that you cannot do with a cheaper mini PC. With such amazing power, we have absolutely not a great responsibility. No, we have absolutely crazy rendering resolutions. 4K Sega Dreamcast without any problem whatsoever. So you can throw everything at it. So far, the emulator has a great compatibility with the game. We're going to have a lot of fun. So moving on to some Sega Saturn, and also here 4K rendering resolution, playing some Die Hard Arcade, and it seems to be running so far so great. It's absolutely cool to see though the game still looks absolutely horrible. Some of the games don't really age with that well, but beside that point, it's kind of cool. I've been testing this out with cheaper, let's say mini PCs, mostly getting 1080p if you're finding that good enough, but it's kind of cool to see this in 4K resolution, especially when you're playing this on the big screen. It looks so much better. Man, this is absolutely classic, by the way. The Die Hard Arcade. The way how you need to fight it. I'm getting some Fighting Force vibes over here. Come on, there we go. We're going to play Roadhouse. Roadhouse. I'm just going to kick everything. Roadhouse. Oh boy, Destruction Derby is absolutely one of those nostalgia games. Did you even know you can link it up to a PlayStation? I should make a video about that. That's absolutely cool. I've been playing that back in the day and it was so much fun. That was, by the way, my first game that I actually got on my first PlayStation. So you understand, this is absolutely pure nostalgia for me. But upscaling this to 4K is absolutely nuts. And that is what I actually wanted to say with these videos. Is that you can just play all of these games on super high resolution without any problem. Of course, you will pay a premium price with chips like this, but if these mini PCs are getting cheaper in the future, if you're watching this maybe over a couple of years on a video, you need to think about it. It's going to be crazy. You can buy these things for cheap and can play all of these games full speed, 60 frames per second on 4K rendering resolution, and it runs without any problem. But let's move on to some PlayStation 2 and make it more challenging. Okay, but next up, PlayStation 2 and also 4K resolution. Let's see. I've been testing out a lot of these mini PCs, and with PlayStation 2 we also hit a barrier where we couldn't play it on, let's say, 1080p or just on 1080p, and with this we can even render it on 4K. So with some F-Zero GX on the GameCube, one of the more difficult games to emulate, and it's, by the way, my first game I've ever bought for the GameCube, and I still own it and I still love it. But on emulation it looks so much better. This is on 4K resolution rendering. It's going to be absolutely epic. So let's get into the game and let's see how it actually plays. But you know what's kind of funny is that I have a GameCube, fully modeled, HDMI, everything on it. But I'd rather to play an emulation at this point, simply because this looks so much better when you're plugging this on a 4K television. This is absolutely the way how you should experience some retro games. And that is the thing why you need to consider if you're having some money to spend, you want to play some newer generation games on rendering resolution like 4K, then we need the power of a Beelink GTR. Throughout the years, many of these mini PCs will become cheaper. However, there is another solution I didn't mention before, because we also have mini PCs, not with the AMD Radeon. No. We're going to be having this with the Nvidia and Intel combination, and with this we're going to be having some serious emulation power. And if you're going to be watching this video going online on AliExpress, this is already an older model. I think this is the RTX 3050. I think they're already selling this with an RTX 4060 it is. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter. There are so many of these powerful RTX ones out there, and if you're going to be using this is going to be like the ultimate emulation beast. And my favorite game, Tekken 4. Nevertheless, we're having absolutely amazing overall performance with PlayStation 2, and you can even upscale it to higher resolutions if you want to without any problem. So what is really convenient if you're going to be loading up PlayStation 3 games with such a powerful chip, the loading times are so significantly shorter compared to, let's say, the low-end chips I've checked out in the past. And also when it comes to the resolution, here we can even upscale it a little bit and getting amazing PlayStation 3 emulation performance.
God is with me, monster.
That will be your ruin.
Tonight will be your last, Prince of Darkness. Die, monster! You don't belong in this world.
PlayStation Portable, no restrictions, we can put it in the highest setting and everything set to the maximum level to make these games look absolutely stunning. Where we have amazing overall performance with Xbox Classic, you can see that it struggles with Xbox 360, also depending what kind of emulator version you're using and what kind of game, in other words compatibility, and of course CPU GPU combination. But it will push this thing to the limit.